Hello onions, I hope you can hear me over this howling wind today. I'm going to introduce you to the contestants here and tell you what I think of them. So first up is the bow saw made by Ox. I've had this a couple of years. It's the blade that originally came with it, so that'll give it a bit of a disadvantage because it's not the best quality blade I get. I suspect this is going to come last in the competition today for a couple of reasons. The main one being I just don't have any luck with a bow saw. I always try and cut straight, but whenever I cut with a bow saw it always seems to go off to one side or the other, and I suspect that'll happen today. Another problem I have with this is it binds up when I start cutting into really thick wood. I suspect it may be because, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but there's no set to the teeth on the blade. It's just completely flat in profile, and it's also very thin metal. So once you start going off target or drifting, as I always do, it just makes it more and more likely to bind in the wood. I'm fully prepared to accept that that's probably user error, but I don't know, are all bow saw blades like that? Was this just a cheaper one that came with a saw? It just seems strange to me that a saw that's aimed at cutting quite rough cuts in all kinds of gnarly wood wouldn't have any set to the teeth. So I'm expecting this will come last in today's competition. Mainly because of me and also because of the disadvantages of having a slightly older blade. I mean, it's not been used a huge amount, but it's obviously seen better days, a bit like myself. So I don't think this will do too well. Next up we have the Makita Reciprocating Saw. This was the first electric saw I bought. I had kind of wanted a chainsaw, but I decided this would be more practical because by changing the blades you can cut wood, you can cut metal, you can cut stone, so it's just generally more useful. It also looks really cool, like a futuristic Star Wars cyberspace gun, and who wouldn't want that in a tool? This will go through all the challenges today, I think, without any problem. The only thing with this is that when you're cutting thick wood, what I find is it starts taking quite a long time. It'll get through it, but if speed is of the essence, it's not the best choice, but it'll stick in there, and as long as you can keep throwing batteries on the end of it, it'll cut all day. I use the 5 amp hour Makita batteries and I get probably 15-20 minutes out of this on a battery. Depends what you're cutting, obviously. Some things it'll just sail through, other things it'll struggle away there, and 15-20 minutes seems to be about par for the course. Next up we have the mini Makita chainsaw. They do various electric chainsaws, Makita. Most of the big full size ones take 2 batteries. This one only takes 1, so it's a bit more convenient from a charging point of view. It's a C model, which means that the bar is narrower at the end, which is supposed to be good for wood carving, which is something I'm intending to try at some stage. I've used this to cut up a fallen tree in the garden that was actually longer than the bar, so as with a Recipro, it will go through anything. It wasn't quick. I mean, I had to come at it from either side, back and forward, and it stalled a few times. It's not the torquiest thing in the world. If you've ever watched my hit blockbuster Makita lawnmower review, this suffers from the same kind of problem. It does tend to stall fairly easily, which I suppose from a safety point of view is quite good, but sometimes a bit annoying when you're trying to cut. When it stalls, you've got to wait a couple of seconds, then press on the safety button on the top and then start it again. So it can be a bit of a pain, but I didn't really buy this for full-scale lumberjacking. It was just for kind of ease and speed of cutting up the occasional fallen log. Last up, Silky KatanaBoy 500. So called because, if I can find the right end to open, it has 500mm long blade, which is 50 centimeters in the old money, or if you use those weird imperial American measurements, that's 3/57ths of a hog's head. I bought this only beginning of this month, I think, and I've not actually used it in anger yet. Let's turn it around so you can see the label. So I'm looking forward to trying this. I will admit that this wasn't anything that was ever on my shopping list, but you can blame YouTube. I just watched so many people using these and raving about them that I thought I've got to have one of those. And you know what it's like when tool envy strikes. You've got to justify it, haven't you? I don't know how I've justified this yet. I just kind of said I want it and I bought it. I've not even used it in anger yet, so if everybody on the internet was lying to me, this might be an embarrassing disaster. But I'm hoping this will finish either second or third. Silky kind of market it as a replacement for a chainsaw, which is obviously marketing hype. But from what I've seen of people using these on the interwebs, they do seem to cut really well with not much effort. It's a Japanese pool saw, which I like anyway. I've got a couple of other smaller ones that I use for woodworking, and I do like the way a pool saw works. I just find them easier to saw with than a push saw, more controllable. So that's the 4 contestants. I suspect the final podium places will be chainsaw first, and then bronze and silver, Silky saw and Recipro saw can fight that out between them. I don't think the bow saw's got a hope in hell, mainly because I'm crap at using them, but we'll give it a fair go anyway. And at the end I'll do a wee summing up and see how it went. So, oh God, I nearly said let's get into it there. That's everybody says on YouTube. What can you say that's not let's get into it? Shall we go? Right, I've trimmed off a few of the side branches here so we can let the dog see the rabbit. So first up, bow saw. This is probably maybe about 7 or 8 centimeters thick, so none of the tools should have any problem with this. I meant to bring a tape measure to measure the logs, but it's not that kind of operation. Right, here we go. This is what I was talking about before. If you look at the cut, I drifted off to the side, as I always seem to do with a bow saw, but no problem getting through that. Next up, the Recipro. Put a brand new blade on it and also a fully charged 5 Ah battery. So, as I mentioned before, the problem with this will be that it'll tend to want to do that with the branch rather than cut it, but let's see how we go. No problem either. Makita mini chainsaw. This also has a fully charged, if I could press the damn thing with my glove, fully charged 5 Ah battery. Stick my safety specs on here. No problemo. Silky KatanaBoy. Look at that shiny blade. never been used at all. So let's see how this does. This might actually be a bit awkward because it's so long. I have to kind of hold this, I presume. So let's see how we go anyway. Again, no problemo. Obviously it wasn't as quick as the chainsaw or even the Recipro saw, but there was no effort involved in that at all. And if this had been more fixed, I think it would have been easier too. So that's the first round over, and no dropouts yet. Onwards and acrosswards. Right, we're now probably on about 10-15 centimetre width. It's a bit awkward to get in here, but I'm having to leave the branches underneath because they're supporting this, otherwise it'll be wobbling about like a hen on a hot griddle, so I have to step carefully. Okay, bow saw, round 2. Not too bad, but again, you look at that, I drifted off to the side. Always happens with a bow saw. Somebody tell me why. Round 2, Recipro. Again, piece of piss. Round 2, mini chainsaw. Safety specs on, just in case. Didn't even break sweat. Round 2, KatanaBoy. I may actually be able to use it double-handed this time because I'm getting a bit more sturdy on the log. No problem again. It may not be as fast as the chainsaw or the Recipro. It's faster than the bow saw, but it's a lot less effort than the bow saw. Personally, I find pole saws are less effort anyway. It just seems more logical that you can exert more strength on a pull than a push. So far, everybody's still in it. Ding ding, round 3. I suspect the bow saw is going to drop out here because it's not struggling as such, but I am. It's quite hard going with the bow saw. I wouldn't usually attempt something this thick with it because I'm a lazy bastard, but let's give it a go anyway. Pause, intermission. I've cut some more side branches off, as you can see. I just lopped them off with the Recipro. So if it comes down to a battery life competition in the end, the Recipro's had a bit of a disadvantage because I've used it for these, but I don't think it will. And back to the Recipro, back to the bow saw. I'm gonna throw in the tile there, bow saw wise. It's starting to bind up, and I accept it's probably user error because my cut is going off to the side again, which means that the blade's twisting and binding. Obviously, if I was on my own and this was the only saw I had, I would persevere. I'd probably cut in from an angle to open up the hole, the slot, or whatever you want to call it, cut here, and then I'd continue on. But because this is a comparison test, and because it's starting to go a bit dark, I'm afraid Mr. Bowsaw is out of the running. Let's see if the Recipro can finish what the Bowsaw started. Not literally, I'm not going to cut in the same hole, that would be a cheat. I'll just go beside it here. So this is what we're on, round 3 now, Recipro. Took a bit longer that time, but still no problem getting through it. It's actually a bit of an advantage for the Recipro now that this is getting a bit thicker with a bit more weight behind it, because it's not shaking about as much. But obviously it's on the other side, it's taking longer because it's thicker. But still no problem there. I'll just trip over this log and be like that. Safety specs on, chainsaw out. I want to be on this side of the blade, so I'm going to have to stand in a ditch here. Excuse me. Right, round 3, mini chainsaw. Our first stall. I did mention this before. It does tend to stall and then you have to start it again. That was probably really bad technique there. I'm sure if anybody ever watched my videos, I'd get shouted at in the comments for trying to start a chainsaw while it's embedded in wood. Sorry, I won't do it again, I promise. Round 3 for the KatanaBoy. I'm having to stand back from this as well because of this branch here, which I'll probably take out before we move further down. We've also got these, but they're actually providing a bit of support, although they're in the way. So I don't want to take them off just yet. So I'll get comfy here. KatanaBoy, round 3. Easy peasy. It's obviously way slower than the Recipro, or actually it might not have been that much slower than the Recipro, but slower than the chainsaw. But it's really effortless, this. Off camera I've chopped a few more of these annoying danglers out of the way. Nobody wants to be stuck in the woodland with a dangler, do they? So now, what are we on? Round 4? Or is it round 5? Round 4 I think. Yeah, because the bow saw did 2 rounds and then dropped out in that last round, so it's round 4. Unfortunately, the trunk isn't really getting much thicker as it goes off down here, and we're going to run up against, I don't know if it's in shot, but there's a tree here. So I reckon we'll get this round and one more out of it, which will not be really testing everything to its full potential, but I'll show you, give you an idea of what you can do with these things anyway. So first up, not the bow saw, because he's not playing anymore. He's gone home to cry to Mummy. First up will be the Recipro. Round 4, Recipro. Stopped there just before the end, as it looked like this log was going to fall off and knock my tripod over. So it wasn't any fault of the saw there, just me precautioning. Right, let's get the next boy in. Round 4, chainsaw. Easy peasy, didn't stall that time, or try and start a cut with it embedded in the wood, so no brownie points lost for me. KatanaBoy. I thought it was going dark there and I'd have to stop filming, and then I realised I still had my safety specs on. Right, what's we on? Did we say round 4? Here we go. Again, slower but effortless. It's hard to show that on camera, the difference between using this and a traditional saw. There's just no effort in it at all. Right, on to round 5, which I think will be the final round. Round 5, this is going to be the last round, because for a start it's getting a bit too dark to film properly, as you can probably see on screen, and also because, as I said before, we're coming up against the trunk of this tree here, so I haven't really got any room to go further. We've got a bit of a slight thickening of the trunk here, but not much compared to the previous cut. So round 5, Recipro. Well, we got there in the end, but as you can see, the Recipro is really slowing down now. Although, as I said at the start, it will go through everything eventually. If we can throw enough time and enough batteries at it, it'll get there. So a very good multi-purpose tool, and looks like a cyberspace gun. Let's get the old, I was going to say blowtorch, so I'm sure I'm getting Alzheimer's. I keep saying the wrong words for things. The chainsaw. Let's get the chainsaw next. Mini chainsaw. Here we go. Still no problem for the chainsaw. As I said at the start, I have actually cut the log longer than the blade with this. It was a case of kind of going in from one side and then the other, and it took a long time, and it went through a couple of batteries and stalled loads, but that's pretty much the length of the bar, so it's doing alright. It would cut thicker than this, but time and this tree we've got in our way. So last go with the KatanaBoy, and then we'll call it a day. KatanaBoy, final round. There was slightly more effort involved there, but still quite easy and no problem getting through that. Not really worth comparing to the chainsaws regards how much we cut in relation to the length of the blade. So that's it. I shall do a brief summing up and then I've got to pack up all my junk and get back to the house. So there we go, competition over. The results were pretty much as I expected. Chainsaw first place by a mile. Second, third place is a toss-up between the Silky saw and the Recipro saw. It's hard to tell when you're using them which one's taking longer, because obviously there's a completely different kind of effort involved. With the Recipro, it's heavier, it's noisier, but you're just basically holding it and letting it fall through the wood. With the Silky, lighter, easier to manoeuvre, but obviously you're having to put a bit more effort in. When we get home and get this on the edit deck, we'll see, we'll add up the cumulative times and see. My gut instinct is that the Recipro just about squeezed out the Silky, but we'll see. Distant fourth, the oxbow saw, not to be confused with an oxbow lake. As I said, there's probably user error there. They've been around for donkey's years, them saws, and lots of people use them. I've either got just the wrong type of blade on it or just the wrong type of technique. As regards what we cut, I have a few samples here, bear with me. So round one was that thick, which is not huge. Round two was that thick. Round three was that thick. And round four was that thick. So none of them were like massively wide, especially at the start. We were just basically cutting twigs, but as I said yesterday when we were doing it back here, we'd kind of butted up against the trunk of this vertical tree, so we couldn't really go any further, plus it was getting stupidly dark. It didn't feel that dark out here, but when I reviewed the footage when I got home, I thought, bloody hell, this is grim. So hopefully I'll be able to lift the levels a bit so you can see something, but that'll do. That is the summary. One thing I will say, which may affect the results, because what I'm going to do when I get home is I'm going to work out the cumulative time that each saw took. On the mini chainsaw, I've got to clean it now when I get it home, so open the side panel, take the chain off the sprocket and the bar off and brush them out, top up the oil if it needs topping up. That's at least 5 minutes. So to be fair, we should add 5 minutes on to the time from the chainsaw just to even it all out. The rest of them, it's just put them away, so there's no kind of post maintenance. A couple of final thoughts as I wend my weary way home. As regards the battery life of the two power tools, I checked them at the end and the Recipro saw was down to 2 bars and the mini chainsaw was still on full 4 bars, which I find quite surprising because I've always thought it was quite battery hungry, but I think it was just the fact that that was such light work for the chainsaw that it didn't really break sweat, so not used any battery juice at all worth mentioning. And the Recipro, as you saw for rounds 3 and 4, it was actually taking quite a while, so run time wise I think the Recipro will have run for a lot longer than chainsaw, so it's used half its battery juice. And I also used the Recipro for doing some of the side twig trimming in between rounds. I don't think that'll have made a huge amount of difference because they were just tiny wee side twigs, but maybe worth half a bar or so. So that was quite a surprising result. I was really expecting the chainsaw to have used a lot more battery juice than the Recipro. So it just shows to go you how your impressions can be misleading sometimes. Right, now I really am going to say goodbye, so catch you next time.